And this time around, we'll be heading out to Kenya, where at least 80 people have lost their lives and thousands have been displaced. This after devastating floods swept across parts of Kenya, raising urgent concerns about a deepening humanitarian crisis. Homes have been destroyed, infrastructure damaged, and communities left vulnerable as heavy rains continue. And we've seen heavy rains in parts of South Africa, Johannesburg, to be specific. And I think it tells a big story of climate change. Its effects are intensifying. Extreme weather across the continent is becoming a fact, and questions are mounting about the preparedness, the response, and the long-term resilience of Africa. And we're joined now by research associate at the University of Johannesburg's Institute for Pan-African Thought and Conversation, Orapeleng. Orapeleng is a Home Africa expert here on the show. He knows the continent in and out, and we'll be chatting to him about this and what it means, not just for the East Central African region, but for Africa as a whole. Orapeleng, thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure having you on News and Views. Really appreciate you giving us your time.
Good morning, Silailo, and all listeners or viewers of Salam Media.
No, the pleasure is all ours. And I think we'll jump right into it. You've been tracking the events out in Kenya quite closely. Can you give our listeners some insight on just how severe the current floods are? Are we looking at a full-blown humanitarian crisis here?
Yeah, indeed, Silailo. I think what is most important is that we need to look at this situation of the torrential rain and flash floods in Kenya within the context of the fact that this is not for the first time Kenya is experiencing the same problem. But it is also important, of course, to also reflect and indicate that the east part of our continent, Africa, for the past 2 decades has been experiencing these heavy rains and floods, which is called for concern and humanitarian crisis, and creates a humanitarian crisis, which calls for the international community to come and assist with that particular situation. It is important, again, Silailo, to indicate that since the past almost 2 weeks, Kenya has experienced this torrential rain and flash floods, which claims more than 83 lives, and more than 3,000 people are displaced with no roof, no food, and clothes, which it is a serious concern. But it is important again to indicate that almost 1,200 hectares of farmland has been destroyed, with the crop that, of course, the Kenyans use as subsistence farming and for, of course, food security has been destroyed. But again, Nairobi, which is the capital city, is one of the areas that are hit hard by this particular heavy rain. But many critics, of course, attribute this to say maybe these floods could have been mitigated had the government could have installed a proper drainage system within the city and the other areas. And of course, with infrastructure development, they attribute this to weak infrastructure development. But I was listening to Johnson Sakaja, who is the governor of Nairobi. In 2022, before he was elected the governor, he indicated that within 100 days, he will focus on implementing what you call the Urban Areas and City Act number 13 of 2011, which section 6 of that speaks more about management and infrastructure development of the city. But that could not actually happen. That is why I was disappointed that 48 hours after this particular rain hit the country, he was nowhere to be found. When he appeared in the national television, he indicated that he is not a firefighter or an emergency official. Emergency officials are on the ground. As a leader, it's irresponsible to say that, because I think when situation like this, a dire situation is created by this particular disaster, people are looking upon the leadership to provide direction and to give an evacuation plan with respect to that particular issue.
Very, very disappointing indeed. And I think, Orapeleng, this raises a big and broader question around climate change and how the African continent specifically should be responding to, I think, a situation that is not of our doing. You know, a lot of responsibilities placed on African countries to try and mitigate the effects of climate change when we are not the biggest contributors of greenhouse gas emissions. Just from a broader perspective, looking at how Africa deals with climate change and how we interact with the rest of the world, especially the number one polluters of this world, like the United States, like India, like China, what role should we be playing when it comes to mitigating the effects of climate change? Is it Africa's responsibility at the end of the day?
Slylo, I think that particular responsibility lies with all countries in the world, but it is important to take you back to indicate that in 2015 there is what we call Paris Agreement on Climate Change, where overwhelmingly member states of United Nations agreed or adopted a plan the plan that says on 5 years basis since 2015, every 5 years, all countries must commit, must make a commitment on the contribution they are going to make to reduce this particular air pollution through that green gas emissions. But it is important also to indicate, Lilo, that you are quite correct that our continent does not actually largely contribute to this particular greenhouse gas emissions, because the continent of Africa contributes less than 4% of that particular greenhouse gas emissions. But these big countries that you have made mention of are contributing largely to the pollution of the environment, which leads to this particular climate change. It is important also to say African Union, subsequent to that 2015, the Paris Agreement, in 2022, African Union also adopted what we call African Union Climate Change and Resilient Development Strategy and Plan that is actually meant to be from 2022 to 2032. But the question is, it is almost 2 weeks since we have experienced these floods in Kenya. I have not heard of African Union concretely organizing a response task team to assist Kenya with respect to rescuing, because people are in a dire situation which requires an emergency. I know that United Nations World Health Organization has donated emergency kits. But when you look at the situation on the ground, there is more of human resource needed. I know that the president of Kenya has, of course, constituted an emergency team made up of the security cluster, soldiers, and of course, technical team, including, of course, emergency services. But that is not enough, because you would imagine if the Nairobi, which is regarded as the urban area or the capital city, is hit hard with this particular floods, you would ask yourself, what about other areas? Because you need to look at this, Lilo, from the context of the what you call the 1948 master plan that of colonial British actually adopted, which kept many Africans into the peripheries. And these British, of course, were in the developed center of the country. And of course, maybe the question that should also be posed is that what has the post-colonial state in Kenya did to reverse that particular spatial development? Because in 1973, there was a plan, of course, of infrastructure development that the government of Kenya adopted. But the critics says it has never been implemented to its latter, which, of course, that's the reason why we've got so weaker infrastructure within even the center, which is the Nairobi. And now I must make this qualification that according to reports that we are receiving, close to 37 out of 83 people who lost their lives are from Nairobi, which is the capital city.
Very, very concerning indeed. And I'm hearing you speak of, spatial planning, and how Africans that are in the periphery of the city are almost the most affected by this because of the historic measures. And I'm thinking of South Africa. I'm thinking of our own country here, and if there are lessons to be learned, because it's almost a similar situation where in the urban areas where there's drainage systems, you're closer to emergency response services. This is not where you find majority of our people. Majority of Black African people historically are in, as you mentioned, the periphery, the outskirts of the major cities, in even the rural areas. Are there lessons that a country like South Africa can learn from this atrocity that just happened in Kenya, considering the fact that we've been getting torrential rains, weird enough, for this season? We never see this amount of rain this time of the year, but it looks like climate change has taken effect, and we're also feeling the effects of it here in South Africa.
Yeah, no, thank you, Silalo. I think what is important, and the lessons that, of course, even our country could learn, is that we need to take this issue of infrastructure development, but not just infrastructure development that is not actually area specific. For an example, addressing spatial development, it requires you to be specific and look at the technical reports produced by experts. And of course, many of these particular African leaders, including here, experts and institutions of higher learning, are producing research with respect to infrastructure development. But the unfortunate part is that there seems to be no political will to attend to this with speed that it requires to mitigate against climate change. Unfortunately, climate change is upon us. What is important is that we need critical leaders, thought leaders, who would be able to look at this particular issue and come up with plans in line with what African Union has adopted in 2022, where African Union Climate Change and Resilient Development Strategy. I think many countries, including South Africa, must look at that strategy and align with that strategy. Of course, countries differ in of specifications, but I think, Slilo, one thing that, of course, it has to be noted is that for SADC as a region, at least, of course, in terms of process of integration of the continent, SADC seems to be moving with speed with regard to infrastructure development as compared to other regions, which I think that it is something that, of course, it must be noted. But it does not mean that leaders must just relax and not be able to develop strategy to actually mitigate what might be the possible floods that, of course, we are experiencing generally in the continent. And
Orapeleng, are you still there? All right, we seem to have lost Orapeleng. I think we're going to be wrapping up our hashtag Africa Focus feature. We're going to take a quick break. News and Views will be back with you after this.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
World-class financial services only at Sapphire Global, your financial partner. If you are looking for Islamic Sharia and ethical financial products, look no further. Sapphire Global offers a wide range of financial service offerings, from short-term to life and investments. A full service center with all financial requirements under one brand. Our highly skilled and experienced consultants are ready to help protect your financial future. Contact us on 041 001 0184 or visit our website on www.sapphireglobalfs.com. Sapphire Global is an authorized financial services provider.
Across Sudan, starvation is tightening its grip. With rising food prices and widespread malnutrition, 8.7 million people are now facing emergency or famine-level hunger. As the conflict intensifies and aid routes narrow, families in Sudan are running out of options and time. The Al Imdad Foundation is delivering life-saving humanitarian aid to those most at risk. Stand with Sudan. Donate online at Al Imdad.
Less than a masterpiece. Droplets of gold inspires precious design. Platinum bursts with intricate freshness, and every pure diamond becomes more than just a girl's best friend. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, where timeless dreams become a reality. Come to us. We tailor-make designer gold, platinum, and diamond jewelry. Trade in or remodel your old gold. Clad yourself with classy name-branded watches. We offer insurance valuation.